I've helped my own employees as well as dozens of our students hit over 100K a month in their real estate investing business. And when I say 100K a month, I don't mean as a company. I mean one rep closing over $100,000 a month consistently month after month. And what I've noticed is they all have the same few things in common. So today, what we're going to be talking about is the mindset of a 100K a month closer. So that way, not only can you become that person, but also you'll be able to identify that person when you're hiring someone into your organization. So the first thing that all 100K a month closers have is a sense of urgency. And so what do I mean by that? When they have a lead that comes in, they do not hesitate to call it. They realize that every single lead is a potential for a 20, 30, 40, 50, maybe even $100,000 deal. So they drop everything they're doing. They're not watching TV. They're not fucking off on their phone. They are always attentive and focused. And they realize that their time is the most valuable resource. And so when a lead comes in, they are calling that lead within seconds. They're dropping everything they're doing. They're fighting to claim it. And if they have an appointment that's booked on their calendar, so today is Tuesday, let's say they have an appointment booked on their calendar for Thursday, they're constantly moving that appointment up. So they're not going to wait until Thursday to call the appointment. They're going to call it the second they see that. And they're going to try to push the appointment until Tuesday because they realize that time kills deals. And again, their time is their most valuable resource. So if they have time to call an appointment that was booked on their calendar for later in the week, they are going to do that. They're going to call the appointment. They're going to try to push it up. They're going to try to be the first one to actually get that deal. They have a sense of urgency constantly, and they are always focused on speed. Now, the next thing that all 100K a month closers have is they are constantly engulfed in personal development. So what do I mean by that? We are helping sellers every single day. And if we can't help ourselves, how are we supposed to relay that same information to sellers? So all of the top closers that I've ever seen, they're always reading books. They're always getting coached by Tony Robbins or any of the mindset coaches, Joe Dispenza. They are always focused on working on themselves. And when you work on yourself, you are able to help people that are stuck in their own broken mindset. Okay, so I'm going to give you guys an example. I had a seller who was really stuck in a bad position and she was just scared to change. So we got to realize her situation. She was in a bad situation. I mean, she was apart from her husband. She was living in a house that had mold, but she had been there for so long and she was so attached emotionally to the property that the only thing that was preventing her from moving forward was her mindset. She just had a broken mindset. She had a fear of change. And so I used something that I heard from a Tony Robbins coach called Burn the Boats. And so basically what Burn the Boats is it's a reframe that gets someone to switch their mindset to do what's in their best interest by committing. And so it goes like this. Back when the Vikings used to take land, whenever they would hit landfall, they would literally turn around, they would torch their boats. And so you ask the seller, why do you feel like they would do that? And they say, well, I guess so they can't turn back. I say, well, it's because they knew what they wanted was in front of them. So are you 100% sure that you don't want to be in this house anymore that's covered in mold and you want to move into that next property that is, close to your husband, or you'll be able to move back in with your husband? She's like, yeah, I'm 100% sure. I know that I want to do that. And then you ask them, okay, so what do you feel like you need to do to burn your boats? She's like, well, I have to sign this contract. Now, I wouldn't be able to do that if I wasn't the type of person that would burn my own boats. So if I'm always scared to make changes and always thinking that money's the most important thing in life, I'm not going to be able to help sellers get out of that mindset. And so when it comes to personal development, a lot of these top closers, these 1% closers that are consistently hitting 100K a month, they realize that money is not the most important thing in life. And they're not just attached to the money. They're attached to helping the seller get the result they want. And they know that quality of life is the most important thing. So when they identify that someone could have a better quality of life, even if they take a smaller price on the home, they can easily articulate that to the seller to help them get to that next property and get them off of the price. So they're all engulfed in personal development and they're always trying to get better, which brings me to my next point. They are always investing in their skills. I've never met a 100K a month closer, or a closer that's consistently hitting 100K a month, that isn't obsessed with investing in their skills. Okay, so think about it like this. I was a sniper in the Marine Corps, and then once I got out, I started doing long range shooting competitions. And what I noticed about everybody that was really good at these long range shooting competitions is they were very focused on their weapon, their gun, right? And they were always trying to find little ways to improve it. They were using different barrels with different barrel twists. They were making sure that their tolerances were completely dialed in because they understood that their weapon was going to be one of the biggest things on top of their skill set to help them win these competitions. And for us, our sales ability is the number one thing that allows us to make more money. So they understand that if they can, increase their close rate 1 to 2%, right? 1 to 2%, they're doing 20 deals a year. That might be another 1 to 2 deals that brings them another 30 to 50K, right? And that's just 1 to 2%. On average, they're trying to get 5% better, 10% better, 15% better. And they know if they invest 10, 15, 20, maybe even $30,000, they are going to get that back tenfold month after month. And they are going to continue to have that skill for the rest of their life. So they don't hesitate to invest in their skills. One of the biggest things that I see with people that struggle to hit 100K a month is they are always trying to find the easy, free stuff. And they're never actually investing in their skills because they're scared that they're not going to get the money back. Okay. And that brings me to the next point, which is every single 100K a month closer is confident in themselves. Okay, so they have a ton of confidence. They know that if other people are getting the results, they're hitting 100K a month by investing in themselves, they are going to get those results as well. But not only that, they are confident when they are talking to sellers. They're not afraid to, ask a question that may piss off the seller. They're not afraid to be themselves on the call. I think one of the huge things that I see with people that are struggling to hit 100K months by themselves is they have no confidence. So when they ask a question, the seller feels that level of uncertainty. They feel like they're not confident in themselves. If you can be confident in yourself, you will be able to relay that to the seller. They're going to feel that on the other end of the phone, and you're going to be able to help them move forward. And so I'll tell you, I had a call yesterday with the seller, and the seller was talking about all these problems they've had because they do everything for someone else. And I just stopped them. I said, look, it's time for Rick to start doing things for Rick. Okay. Rick needs to be the one to make decisions for Rick, to start doing things for Rick. And the only way that I was able to get away with that is because I'm confident in myself. And I would do those things for myself. Going back to the mindset, I don't let other people dictate how my life is going to be. I dictate my own life. And it's the same thing with every 100K a month closer. They understand that ultimately they're responsible for their decisions. And they have the confidence to speak what's on their mind to actually help people. They're never afraid of rubbing someone the wrong way. They're just going to be themselves. And when they're having conversations with sellers, they don't feel like they have to be someone else. And the sellers can feel that on the other end of the phone. So they're always confident in themselves, which brings me to my next point. 100K a month closers are not afraid to ask tough questions. Okay. So when you have a seller who is stuck and they, they've got the motivation, you can help them, but they're stuck on something. Maybe they're stuck on, I need to get the highest price for the property, or my neighbor sold for, $300,000 over what you're offering me. 100K a month closers are not afraid to ask, have you considered that you holding on to what the other neighbors have sold their properties for is the number one reason that you're not able to get that time back with your family or whatever they're after? Right? They're not afraid to ask the tough questions. And they're not afraid to ask the seller, are you 100% committed to making this change? So that way you no longer have to deal with this problem. The 100K a month closers are relentless with their questions, and they are going to get a real commitment from the seller. Okay. Now that brings me to the next point, which is 100K a month closers are non-emotional. Now, what I mean by that is not that they're not empathetic. When they are on the call with the seller, they're always empathetic, but there's a difference between empathetic and sympathetic. So empathetic, they're there with the seller. They're there, helping them experience their problems, but they are not emotional themselves. And so I'll tell you, one of the biggest things that I see with consistency when I've hired 100K a month closers, or people that could be potentially 100K a month closers, is they have these ups and downs. And so they show up on the call depending on how they feel. are dependent on how they feel. And so what I mean by that is if they had a bad day, they had a fight with their wife. When they show up on the call, they show up on the call all mopey, right? If they had a bad month and they only closed 50K this last month instead of 100K, they're going to just show up all mopey on the calls. And so what all the 100K a month closers have that I've seen is they show up every single day the exact same way. They're able to put their emotions at the door and just be there to help the seller. And so I was on a call with some of the top guys from 7th level, some of their best trainers, and they were actually being coached by another 100K a month. This is 100K a month in commissions. He closed over $1 million a month in sales. And he was saying that one of the things that he constantly does is if he has a bad call, he'll just put music in. He'll listen to a song to reset his mindset. So the next call he hops on, he's ready to go. And he has little visual cues or verbal cues that he uses just to set his frame. So he knows that whenever he would say, hey, bro, he would be able to relax and have a real conversation with the seller. Now, obviously, we're not going to call all of our sellers bro, but you need to find whatever resets you. If it's going outside and taking a walk to reset so you can be there showing up the same way every single time for your sellers, you're going to be able to find that consistency. This also goes back to people that get into sales slumps, right? All a sales slump is you're feeling a certain way about your process or you're feeling a certain way about yourself. And so if you can get rid of that, you can be non-emotional and just focus on being there, helping the seller, having fun with your process, you are going to consistently hit 100K a month. If you're able to detach from being stressed, like I know a lot of times as closers, you have a bad month and then you start worrying about your bills and then you show up that way for the calls. So you want to make sure that you can do whatever you need to do. If you need to do a meditation, if you need to go on a walk outside, if you need to listen to a song in between your calls, it doesn't matter as long as you can show up every single time the exact same way and you are not emotionally attached to whatever outcome you have. Which then brings me to my next point is 100K a month closers are unattached or they're not attached to the outcome. And here's what I mean by that. The difference between 20K a month closers, 30K a month closers, and guys that are consistently hitting 100K or multi 100K months is they're not worried about the outcome. The only thing that they're worried about is helping the seller get the result that they're after. And the seller can feel that. And so when you're constantly focused on, I have to do this exact thing, or I have to ask this exact question, or say this exact statement, and I just have to close this deal. Like if I don't close this deal, my boss is going to be mad at me, or I'm going to be mad at myself. If you're constantly thinking about that, then you're constantly going to be struggling on your sales calls, and the seller are going to feel that. So instead of focusing on closing the contract and making money and how much money you're going to make, just focus on doing your process to the best of your ability. Like the process, if you've invested in your skills and you've been trained, that you have a sales process. Just show up, have fun with the process, and try to help the seller get the result that they're after. Understand that the best way that you can help them is understanding their problems and helping them get to that end result that they're after. Those are the two things that you need to understand. And when you go into the call with that mindset, instead of you thinking, I need to read this script and I need to ask these questions, you understand why you're asking the questions. Okay, I understand that if I find out the seller's problems and what they're dealing with, then I will better be able to help them get to the end result. So I need to know, what are they looking forward to after the sale? What is their end result? What is their goal? And then I can figure out how to help them get there. Okay, so put all of the scripting, everything out the wayside and just focus on being there for the seller. And then the last thing that every 100K a month closer has is they enjoy helping people. I have never seen a 100K a month closer in this business. And now that I think about it, in any business, any 100K a month closer that doesn't enjoy helping people, that's only focused on the money. I'll tell you, I have had people come into my organization and the only thing they care about is making money. And they struggle because the sellers feel that. The sellers feel that they're actually not there to help them. They're there to close a deal or make a deal happen. And every time the seller feels that, it immediately turns them off. So the only thing that they're focused on is finding the problem, finding the solution, so that way they can actually help the seller get to where they want to be. They're not afraid to ask the seller tough questions to actually help them get there because they know that it's in their best interest. And they're constantly finding ways to be able to reframe the seller, help them with their mindset. They're investing in their skills to be able to help the seller get what they actually want. And it goes back to not constantly thinking about the money. So if you are the type of person, or your sales rep is the type of person that's only focused on money, the only thing that they care about is money, they're going to trigger that inside of the sellers. The sellers are going to feel that, and they're going to be thinking the exact same way. They're going to be thinking money is the most important thing. And when they get a price objection, they're going to have no idea how to overcome it because logically it makes sense to them. The only thing they care about is money. So if the seller says, yeah, I just care about getting the highest price, they're going to be like, well, that makes sense. I would do the same thing. And so really good 100K a month closers or multi 100K a month closers, all they really care about is helping people. And they know that money is not the most important thing to them. So to do a recap, the 100K a month closers, every single one that I've seen, they all have a sense of urgency. They all have engulfed themselves in personal development. They've invested in their skills. They're confident in themselves, right? They're not trying to be somebody else. They're not trying to sound like anybody else. They're not afraid to ask tough questions. They're not emotional. They're not having roller coaster months every single month because 1 month they're happy, 1 month they're sad, and they show up all mopey on their calls depending on how they're actually feeling. They're attached from the outcome and they're just focused on helping people. So if you can engulf that mindset, if you can be that person, you can also hit 100K a month. And when you're looking to hire someone inside of your organization, you need to figure out, how do I ask questions to figure out if they have these traits? So hopefully this helps you guys. Now, obviously there's a lot more that goes into hitting 100K months as an individual sales rep. So if you guys want to learn more tools to help you get to those 100K months per rep, make sure you like and subscribe to this channel.